Hey everyone, Kyle Jason here with another video. So in today's video, we're finally going to get started with our beginner's portfolio website series. In today's video, I'm going to be taking you guys through making an outline or design brief for your project, as well as some very low fidelity wireframes just so we get an idea of the art layout. So a typical design document or design brief has elements of, the project's name, the project's description, your timeline or deadlines, what deliverables you want, a stakeholder report, who your audience or users are going to be, the background of the project, the primary design goals, as well as the budget. If you're writing out a spec for another designer as a creative director, or you're taking this to a client meeting, you might also have constraints or device considerations as well. But for the purpose of this video, this is kind of just a personal project, but we are going to take this brief seriously because we're dealing with our personal brand here. So we're going to include some of those elements of the more traditional or professional client brief within the one that we do today. And in our wireframe mockups, we're basically going to be dealing with a very standard website layout. We're going to have a one-page portfolio site, which is going to be composed of either two sections or two-page elements. We're going to have the portfolio part showcasing all of our projects, our about section, as well as some contact information, as well as a project portion, which would be, a case study, which would have all the wireframes as well as screenshots or links to your actual application design. So for the purposes of this series, I'm going to be taking you guys through all the steps like I noted before. However, we're only going to be able to really kind of do one site. So I'm going to take you through, doing the wireframe, doing the high fidelity mockup, coding it, getting it online, purchasing a domain name, all of that. However, you might want some variation. You might want a different color than I use, etc. So I'm going to be, making notes and having little comments throughout the series on places where you could vary some things, as well as doing a video at the end of the series talking about all sorts of things that you could add so that your personal style really comes through. But the purpose of this series was really to just give a beginner a great place to start, to show off their work, and kind of take them through the process of building their own and first online presence. So let's head over to the pen and paper, and get started. So what I have here, guys, for our design brief as well as our mockups is just a regular ruled notebook for our brief and a composition notebook for our wireframes. I usually use a dot grid notebook, but I figured it might be easier for you guys to find a composition notebook, so this is fine. You basically just need something that's gridded. We'll do fine. So the only other thing that I really use for my outlines and mockups is a pen or pencil and a straight edge. So I have a cheap $1 ruler here as well, so that I can make my lines straight in my layout wireframes. Awesome, so let's get started with our design brief. Cool. So you're gonna have to excuse my handwriting, but basically, usually with a design brief, I like to start with the project name and description. So for the purposes of this series, since we're just making our portfolio site, I'm just gonna write portfolio site. Great. So essentially, after that, you want to jot down the project description. Since this is kind of vague in terms of when you're branding yourself and this is your first online presence, you might really not know how to describe it. So let's go ahead and really describe it through three main goals that we want to accomplish with our portfolio site. So the first goal of your portfolio site should be to show your work. The reason why you want to show your work is because showing your work creates, this pencil, man, creates credibility. When someone can come to your site and come to your portfolio and see work and see your style and see how you implement your process, whether that be your design or development process, that creates credibility in your craft. So basically they immediately see your work and they know, okay, this person can do X, Y, Z. This person has worked on projects that consist of this design philosophy or this style. So they know immediately where you stand in terms of your trade. The second goal is going to be to tell your story. The reason why you want your portfolio site or the website in which you brand yourself to tell your story is that this, first and foremost, establishes trust. Now, the important part of establishing trust with your online portfolio or presence is that you want to share your story, where you came from, how you got into design or development, what your process is. And when you share that, it basically creates trust between you and prospective employees and clients because they can see where you came from. They can see, what it took and what parts of you do you really implement inside of your design process, what type of person you are when it comes to creating value for others. So that's basically the reason why you always want to share your story. It immediately establishes a rapport with someone that you might be working with in the near future. So our third and final goal, but definitely an important one, would be to share your contact information. And what this is, first and foremost, is it gives a way for people to hire you. This is very important because, if someone comes to your site, they love your work, and they have a project that they need a contractor or a freelance designer on, or a contract developer for, 6 months or something like that. They should be able to come to your site, see your work, hear your background story, love your process, all that. But all of that work and all of that effort put into showing your work and telling, the background story behind who you are, what your design philosophy is all wasted if they can't have a way to effectively contact you. They can't, have an easy way to get in touch with you, to work with you potentially, invite you to speak at their conference, etc. So basically, the third goal would be to share your contact information, have a way for people to easily connect with you, whether that be, online, in person, through email, social media, whatever that may be. That should be your third goal with your portfolio site. So usually after your project description or your, 3 main goals, what a lot of people will do is they'll have a stakeholder analysis. Now, because this is a, just a personal site, kind of your first online personal presence, you don't really have many stakeholders. So I guess who to describe as, for this portion of the brief would be your audience or your users. So mainly for this site, your audience is going to be prospective employers, most likely, people that want to hire freelance clients, maybe even other designers or developers. If you're a high school student, maybe a school, things like that. So you could just write those down. And for this, I'm going to put prospective client/employees. Client/employers. Then I'm going to put, maybe a school, other designers, other developers, etc. So, that's probably fine for the purposes of this. Usually when, people put up a portfolio site, the main 2 that they're concerned about is prospective clients or prospective employers. They're basically just putting their work out there so that they can get hired. So we're fine with this audience for now. Like I said, if you were to do this brief for, a client, or you're writing this brief for a designer in your agency or something like that, this is the section where you would put, your primary stakeholders, investors, and things like that. So next, basically, you want to outline your design goals. And these can be different than your, top 3, your main goals. But essentially what your design goals are, what you want to communicate first and foremost with the design of your site. You can think of it as what you're going to prioritize with the design of your site, but we're going to talk about that more once we get to our wireframe stage in this video. So for right now, what I'm going to write for this step is basically, I just want, clear communication of my brand. This can consist of background story, my workflow, previous experience, and that's pretty much it. So another thing that you can mention in your design goals would be what you actually want the site to look like, or basically communicate about your overall design philosophy. For me personally, and for the purposes of this series, we're going to go with something that's simple, clean, professional looking, and effective. We're going to talk about this, what effective means explicitly once we get to the wireframe stage, but essentially what it means is this is going to highlight our work right away. People are going to come to the site, know immediately what we do. They're going to get a quick synopsis of who we are, and as well as an easy way to contact us, all in one page. So, so far we have our name and description, our top 3 goals, the audience, and basically our design goals. The other things that you would include in something like this, if you're doing it for a client, or the resources that you need, the cost, the timeline with deliverables, as well as the deadline. But since we're doing this on our own, we could be a little bit loose with the deadline. Let's say that this would take us a week over the course of the video series, probably something like that. But for now, I'm pretty happy with this. And, this should give you an idea of organizing your thoughts for making your first portfolio site.